Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I'm your griot, here to tell you a story. Now, what's next, right? Um, you look at, go all the way back to 63, right? Go all the way back to 47, go all the way back to 29, right? And we have been on a roller coaster ride ever since. But really, forget 29, go all the way back to the 1890s, the Spanish-American War. Go all the way back to 1850s and the Civil War, the lead up to the Civil War, Reconstruction, the expansion into the West, the war with Mexico, and then the Spanish-American War, and then are going into Hawaii, are going into the Philippines, are going into the Pacific. This is before the Spanish American War. And then we have the Spanish American War, and we take the Pacific. We take all of, through the Monroe Doctrine, or Manifest Destiny, we take all of that. You put that into contrast into what happened after World War One and at Versailles. We guaranteed World War II was going to show up. And World War II was, World War One and World War II were the thing about keeping Germany down, right? So was Versailles. And then the separation of Europe into East and West was, again, to keep Germany down. We split Germany in half, Eastern Germany, Western Germany, right? And we gave Russia all those, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and a whole bunch that I'm leaving out. And then then we had the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the number of political overthrows, and you have to realize that this isn't American hegemony. America was just used to form and shape the New World Order, and that New World Order pretty much had started. You should go read the book Master and Commander about this little sloop in the English Navy, um, and what it was doing in the Mediterranean, and off into the um, oceans that were North Africa and on into Asia, right? So, the United States, between this, 1880s and World War One, we were all over the place. We were in China. We were at the behest of the English, and that special little relationship that we seem to have with England. We are the same. And why did Brexit even happen? It's because this whole thing with the Ukraine and Russia, and then Third World War in Europe, right? And there'll be a few nukes thrown around, but not total nuclear annihilation. And basically, all of Europe and Russia and all of that will be turned into Disneyland, right? A corporate wonderland of dystopia. And America will be a separate little entity that is Canada, and they'll call it something like Pacifica or Pangemia or something. But basically, Canada, United States, Mexico, Central America, South America will be, and the Antarctic will be a itself, and all the Disneyland of Europe will be an entity unto itself, including kind of the North Pole, and then Asia will be this entity halfway in between, and China will be sliced up into the moron member of the family, and that will probably be happening by 2040, somewhere between 2030 and 2040, right? And here we are in 2023. So 2030 is only 7 years away. And time flies when you're having fun. Just look at how time flew between Richard Nixon and um, and now, right? It's like there have been six different millennials, six different planets. And people are in dysmorphia. They just don't understand, can't figure it out. They're ripped apart by their cultural biases, which include religion, race, gender, and economic disparagements, right? And that goes across the planet. And so here we are, right on the edge of the diving board, ready to bounce into the way unknown, right? And everyone's arming up. You know, um, Putin went into. Well, I don't really think he was expecting what it's being like. He would roll in there. In 3 days, he would conquer Ukraine, right? Because Ukrainians, Russia has been living with the Ukrainians for the last 200, 300 years. They know the story. They've invaded, they've run it, they've controlled it, they've murdered, and the thing about the Ukrainians is they're like Tweety Bird. Oh, they don't know me too well. They always get even, right? So the Ukrainians can't win this war, but they can um, disrupt and frag the Russian um, Empire, right? And the Russian Empire was never going to be bringing back the Soviet Union, right? And Putin could have gotten a lot more politically and economically if he had just kept those troops on the border and didn't go into the Ukraine. Period. Right? Just kept them there, and had kept, sharpening up their blade. I mean, Ukraine had 8 years to sharpen their blade, meaning we went in there, we kept taking 1,000 guys here and 1,000 guys there, and I took them to England and different parts of NATO into the United States, and showed them how to use HIMARS, how to use 77s, how to use all the technology that we're going to give them, and how to use javelins, right? And Donald Trump, after he tried to do his little muscling of the stand-up comedian to get dirt on JoJo, the used car salesman, and his son Hamlet, or Omelet, that all of this stuff is so obvious. What you have to do is not look at the narrative, but the threads of the narrative, and you can see a whole other tapestry. And here I am, a blind guy, right? And I'm living out in the middle of nowhere, and I have no access to any media whatsoever except my radio can, I get, uh, you know, ETSU's public radio, which is quite good, but it goes in and out depending on the astronomical what's happening above. But the one channel that I get really strong is this off the wall Bible belting channel. But everything else, not so much, right? No internet, no any of this stuff. I have to drive. The closest I can get the internet is from my next door neighbor a mile away from me, and I have to drive up on his driveway. So I can't use it all the time because he has people staying here, maybe 10 to 15 days a month. So 10 to 15 days a month, I can't do what I'm doing right now, right? So, but my other neighbor who has put spy cameras all over this place, and he doesn't realize that the spy cameras are just extends his Wi-Fi because they all work off the Wi-Fi, so they're bouncing off each other. So he has one, like, I don't know where, but so close that down in the man cave, I can get his Wi-Fi signal like 5x5. And I said, "Why don't you let me give me the passcode of your Wi-Fi?" "I'm not going to do that," you know. He wants me to do all kinds of things for him, but he really never. I mean, we made a deal where so he has these trailers and big vehicles, and he can't turn around. So he cleared out a chunk of my property so he could just, turn around in that. And I put up a fence. What are you doing? Put up a fence. And I said, why should I let you do this? He won't even let me have the wife. Oh, your lawn. I said, well, I don't even have a lawn. Well, you got to. Okay. You do it 10 times a season? Sure. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I just did that to, show him I could do it. Right. And so, it was no big deal, so I took it down. It was like I said, it was just a little piece of string there. "What are you doing?" "Ah!" You know? And it's actually he's I don't have any TV. I can't watch, the I Love Lucy show. He's better than I Love Lucy, "Colonel Sanders, you got some explaining to do," it's like, he is just and he's not, you know stupid. He's just a freaking moron. And see, I shouldn't be upset with that word because it's not deleterious towards any psychologically handicapped folk because folks who have issues aren't handicapped. No, sorry, they're not. They just have a different way of looking at things, right? And we put things in the nomenclature of handicap so we can cause disruption and trauma, right? And that's the only way the few reptiles that rule the hidden hand. So all these wars, all these calamities, all these economic crashes and pandemics and starvations of food insecurity, blah blah blah, are manufactured. We live in a world of abundance. I mean, I live like and all the millionaires who are moving in here, when they meet me, they really get upset when I say I live like a millionaire on $400 a month. "Oh, and they see how I live, and they are jealous. And pretty much my whole freaking life, people have either loved me, adored me, hired me for my skill sets, and were happy to pay me um, very well. Um, and then there were people who were jealous of it, right? And even people who were close of it were jealous. Like my first wife, basically, we were together almost 10 years, and they were 10 great years because I kept reassessing and rejiggering our relationship to make it better and better for her, right? So she kept saying, well, it's, sex is great. He's really funny. He always loves me. He's not fooling around. He totally supports me. He is really connected in the art world, aesthetic world, economic world. He's teaching me all this great stuff, and he gives me great respect and supports my abilities in things that everyone said I was crazy, right? So that's why we were married 10 years, because she was great. That was why I was with her. She was great. And then when she got to it, because she kept, like I would, you know, do a nightclub or a restaurant or something that would get accolades, right? And my presence, that thing would have been, it wouldn't even have happened unless I was there. And basically, I always stayed in the background. I got paid really well for what I did. The people of notoriety and power and understanding would say, yeah, Al is cool. He's the dude. So I get more work. I did not have to like, look at me, look at me, look at me, because the people who mattered to me already knew it. Wasn't a big deal, right? So I never made, and it was a lot better because I remember I lived uptown on 87th Street. And I would go to this pharmacy. It was an old school pharmacy that had a counter, had a great breakfast and a great lunch, a great dinner. I mean, great, but it was a counter. It wasn't a restaurant, it was a counter. And it had an amazing magazine stand out on 8th Avenue. It was right across the street from Lincoln Center, give or take. And all these amazing people would come in because they were all living at these fancy addresses on the West Side. Um, and the most notoriety was the one that John Lennon lived in, the whatever it was called, I forget. don't pop into my mind. Anyway, I would go there, and all these people of notoriety would have breakfast there, go and get a newspaper, the Paris Times or the London Economist or you name it. This newsstand had it, and I would go there for that. I would because they had the outside newsstand, which was really great. But there was a whole wall of pharmacy of these journals, like from the Council of Foreign Relations, from Aviation and Space Weekly, from JANS, you name it. It was like getting the 411 from the intelligence world, because half the people in who were like at the UN and the Ford Foundation, and Rockefeller, they all kind of lived in around the Lincoln Center, right? And Dakota, that was the name, that fancy address that John Lennon and Yoko Ono lived in, but a whole bunch of other people. So you would see all these well-to-do people running around, and like what's his name? Woody Allen lived there, right? And so he'd be running around trying to get someplace, and people would be running. Oh, Mr. Allen, I want your autograph. He hated that, and I wouldn't want that. So that's why I was a fan of, like, people who mattered. They knew me, right? I was indomitable. I was, I wasn't famous. I was infamous, right? I was the dude. Yo, dude. Um, Cary Grant used to call me Yo, dude. Once we became friends. Um, Pretty much everyone in the 70s called me Yo, dude. Anyway, but my first wife. So I remember one time I lit a bar, right? And I wanted a certain effect, so I used pin spots, R38s, right? They're like aircraft landing lights, right? Parabolic reflector with another little parabolic. The element is here. It lights up. It doesn't shine all out of the lens. It goes through this reflector and bounces off the other parabolic, so you have this beam of light, right? And so I had, and there was no lighting thing that you could buy from Newtone or any of the other companies, that Lightolier or any of those guys. So, and this lamp was a low voltage, worked on 12 or 24 volts, right, depending on which lamp you used. Anyway, so I went down to Radio Row and found these 24-volt transformers that came out of airplanes, and I bought a bunch of them. And what I did was I had two 10-gauge copper wires, and I would string, put them across where I wanted to light instruments, right? And I basically got, I wound insulated number 10 solid around a stick, and it was like a spring, and I attached it to the little screw on the lamp, and I put an alligator clip on the other one, and I put another one of these, little curly fry wires. And so I could put that light fixture anywhere by just putting two alligator clips on the bare wire. And because it was solid, the two curly fry things to the lamp held it quite firmly, and I could tilt it one way or the other by a few inches, and it would stay that way, or this way, or that way. And it was a very simple, very beautiful motif. And so along the bar, there would be these pin spots of light. Everything else would be dark, but right there, every 3-4 feet on the bar would be lit up, and we'd have a really mahogany table, all totally, polyurethane and shiny. And so that put a warm brown glow through the whole place, and then places where there were stairs and exits, and I put a pin spot on every table. And then where the stage was, where the entertainment would be, I lit it up theatrically, right? And you just saw the refuse of my a bad stutter. If I don't have the word really hardwired into the tape that I'm rolling out speaking, I start stuttering, right? But I trained myself because I had a great audio a teacher who taught me how to speak, right? How to be an orator, right? And then I went to theater school years later at Juilliard and at Hofstra and at the Dublin National Theatre, and I learned a lot more about. So I know how to act. So when I am doing this show, and doing it as a vehicle for the shamanic energy, being the little shamanic pebble in the World Wide Web, I got it down. So I'm giving you the 411 right now of what they won't tell you, right? So we're heading into World War III, right? And it's going to be, all you got to do is look at what's happening to Ukraine, and any of those morons like Scott, what's his name, and all the moron scholastics who you don't know what you're talking about. It's the America, it's Jeremy, America's just a putz. It's a pawn. It itself is going. I mean, we're not even a country anymore. After the 9/11 and after the Patriot, we don't have a constitution. We're under martial law, and people. Now I am so old, and I just came back from seeing two doctors, and again, my bone doctor, the guy who keeps me walking, he's getting me these new shoes to align everything because he still is like amazed. He took some serious x-rays of from my hips, my knees, my femurs, my ankles, and he goes, you shouldn't be able to walk. Everything is, you shouldn't even have legs. So so why do I walk? Because I can. And if I let them cut my legs off, just like, between Thanksgiving and about 3 weeks ago, they wanted to do open heart surgery. I said, what are you, fucking nuts? No. You haven't done any kind of imaging, so you don't know what's going on in there. Let's do the imaging first, right? And you haven't really done, you need to do this kind of blood panel, not that kind of blood panel, because that's pretty much staying the same thing all the time, which gives you this ballpark like, oh boy, your cholesterol is this and your blah blah is that, and blah. But how about all these other things that are more specific pointers to heart disease or organ failure or all those kind of things? Why don't we do those, right? So anyway, they've done all that, and I'm going to go see the two doctors who say you got to open heart surgery. And so I know how my body is, and I've died already 7 times. I know what it is. It's not a big deal, right? And unlike I was talking to a friend of mine, a lucky guy, the OG. He really is, because he's another guy who died a zillion times serving his country. He has been in the military since I think Reagan, and then he came out and he was a minister in a really poor church in the mountains of West Virginia, right on the border of Virginia, West Virginia. And then, he went, 9/11 happened and they took him back in, right? And they put him, he was like in his 40s and they put him in special forces. He was like, the, and he was a pastor, not anyway. So he went first to Afghanistan, got blown up. Then he went to Iraq, got blown up. Then they shipped him to Korea, put him right on the front line. He got really sick there. And then they, instead of like saying, okay, you're really sick, we're gonna discharge you medically, they just kept pushing him until his organs are gone. He got toxed in Germany because he was stationed a place where they were burning really nasty shit. He had gotten, shot and blown up like 5 times. And I mean, he should be, gotten a Congressional Medal of Honor, but no. They just, once he couldn't do anything, once he was a used up rag, and they just, said, okay, you're out. And they didn't give him disability, or he had to fight for it. It was like, and he's not the only one. Virtually every soldier who has fought since Vietnam has experienced this. So I was talking to him yesterday, and we were like two old guys because he's 62 and I'm in my mid 70s, and we have both burned the candle at both ends, but we're both very philosophic. You should understand what that word really means. And the difference between religion and theology, that's the other one. Theology is the understanding of God's love, and religion is the monetization of God's word. And God never said anything, so we don't know what his word was. So it's the amusing thing is you keep finding more. I know what I'm talking about. You're a moron. That's what you fucking are. So here's a good example of that. Do, 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 do.
We're very important people. We're very important pieces from all different segments. So I had the three categories of the stuff I had. But when the Israelis were breaking arms, I mean, the Israelis had pretty good censorship of what the narrative was in the U.S. But when you got the pictures of the Israeli two soldiers holding the guy's arm over a rock and a third soldier throwing a boulder down on his arm, that went crazy. The same way Sabra and Shatila murders went wild. That's the way it works. It's like great video can't be suppressed. News organizations want it out there more than they want to suppress it.
Well, do you know why the pictures of the train didn't hit it right off the bat? Why it took 2 weeks?
I really haven't followed that close.
One of the most important things happened in America.
It's because the three largest investment entities in the world, BlackRock, AGA, and another one, own controlling interests of all of the major networks. Fox, ABC, NBC, CBS.
Right. No, I understand that.
And all the newspapers, they own it. And they also owned the controlling interest of the railroad that...
look, I know they are very effective at controlling stuff. But the way it gets out of their hands is when it is particularly dramatic.
It never gets out.
And not always does it get out of their hands, no matter how dramatic it is.
So it's a picture of, when and it went totally off the rails because the railroad wouldn't give the fire department the manifest of what chemicals were there. So the fire department handled it incorrectly. And the MTS, and the only reason this is starting to come about is the MTSB has made their preliminary report and said that this wasn't an accident. This was malfeasance because they had.
And anyway, so that guy's a scholastic. I know what I'm talking about, and I drive him insane when I talk about the things I talk about, right? And he keeps sending me things from Scott Ritter and the Gray World and all the above, right? And I've turned him on to people like Jimmy Dore, which is from that same school, but at least Jimmy Dore is a stand-up comedian. At least he's funny. At least he says, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I sent him stuff from Joe Rogan, who is more a corporate guy. He's been, a corporate shill for most of his life. But he is a great example of what is known as the loyal opposition, meaning the guys who control the narrative. They want to control all sides. That's why we have a liberal party and a conservative party. That's why we have the left and the right. And it's there to give the illusion. I mean, we don't have democracy right now, if we ever did. I mean, there's points where we have a little bit of it. And that is one of the beauties of America, is that we have a little bit of it, right? And most people don't travel. I lived in Syria and Iran and and Sweden and a whole bunch of other countries. I mean, I lived in Sweden, and this in the early '70s before I met Don. And for a year, I had a buddy there, and I got a driver's license there that looked just like a Swedish passport. And so Sweden, the people are nuts, so they gave everyone a holiday, and not just 2 weeks off with pay, but 2 weeks off pay where they could go anywhere in the world they wanted to, and the state would pay for the airplane ride, hotel rooms, all the tours, all the meals, everything, because they found that cheaper for the mental wellness of their population. Um, and Sweden's quite what I'd say semi-xenophobic, not quite as bad as Japan, but so that's why I went there to hang with my friend in this little town, got this passport, and you know, I would go to Stockholm. There was a train that went from this little town straight to Stockholm, and I could get off on that train before it hit Stockholm. It would be the airport. I could get off from that little town straight to the airport, walk into the international thing, and look at the board and see what flights were going to leave in the next 4 hours to where, right? Anywhere in the world. That's how I went to all these places. And so I would go to this little desk that was for this, and I said, so I see that some people aren't going to get on the airplane, and so is there still an opening to go on that flight? And they'd say, sure. And I'd show them my driver's license, and they said, okay, so you live there? I said, yep. I said, I got a driver's license. See, I live there. And so they say, oh, no problem. And they would fill out all the paperwork. They would have, there's, this flight's going there, and 20 of Swedes they have the visa. So that's coming from the state of Syria or the state of Iraq or the state of Iran or the state of wherever. And they would just fill it all in, hit it all the little stamps, and I'd have the visa. And then I would get this little card where they take my picture, and it would go into their database, that when the airport over there went into the diplomatic database for visas, they would see my little picture, and I would have the little visa in my hand, and I'd have my driver's license that looked like a Swedish passport, and they just go click, click, click. I mean, I had all these stamps in my. I remember one time when I was getting a policeman stopped me in Sweden, and there are all these international stamps on my driver's license. He goes, "What's this?" I said, "Yeah, it's just decoration." Is it against the law? He goes, "Nah, but it's very strange." I said, "It's Sweden," and he laughed hysterically. Then he became my friend because he was a not a regional policeman, but he was a national, like an FBI kind of guy, and he was at a roadblock, right? And the guy that the sheriff guy said, "What the fuck is this?" and showed it to that guy, and then I was talking to that guy, and then we became buddies, right? And he is still a buddy of mine, and he now works at the Hague, international, and and he has retired so many different times, and they keep bringing him back. He's about my age, right? He's a little bit younger than me, and he has been, he's in Yugoslavia, every place there've been war and war crimes, he's been there. That's really is his. He's like, you know. And so when I told him I was part of the BBI, that's when he really, wow, you're part of the BBI, because nobody, unless you're a guy like him, no one knows what the BBI, and they probably switched the name already, because I wasn't like, working in them. I wasn't working in them. I was working for them. All these things I've done. I've always been a contract worker, never an employee. Because as an employee, you have to do what they say. As a contract guy, no, you just have to deliver what they want. And that's why they hire you, because you don't have to follow their rules, but you do have to produce, right? And if you have a good record at producing, well, they'll hire you and they'll let you in on what's going on, and you'll get to see, and you'll have access. And that's what I've always. And one of the things where I am right now, so I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing any contract work or doing anything. I'm just out here in the woods watching it all go down. And so I talked to a couple of people last night who are tired from that world, but they're like me, still watching it, right? And they still have experience to look at the threads rather than the narrative. And we were, going on, and those guys, they do live, they're teaching in universities. They do have the internet. They do have access to stuff like at their fingertips, and still we talk because they want my impression. I said, "What about this?" And I will, just like I did earlier on, gave you what I thought was like what this narrative of Russia and Ukraine had more to do. Everyone says, "Well, when Russia and China get together, boy, they're going to take over the world." No, they will. It'll be a shit storm, right? Because both of those entities are the most incompetent pieces of crap. Yeah, they got some money, they got some thing going on, they got a lot of people, they got somewhat of a history, but they do not have the ability, right? So China built a 700 ship navy. Half of them are like little toy boats. I mean, they don't have any aircraft carriers. They're this one piece of crap that the Russians didn't even want. And yes, they're building two now in a dry dock, but they have never really had an aircraft group. To run an aircraft group, you need admirals, and they have no admirals of any experience. And like all the guys, so we have 11 like gigantic aircraft groups, and half of them have most of half are Nimitz class, which are like humongous boats, bigger than the Kennedy, and then there are the Ford class that are like the Starship Enterprise, right? They have laser weapons, right? So people are going, "Oh wow, hypersonic weapons coming! Oh, well, the Ford class have lasers. The speed of light is way faster than hyper. Hypersonic is anything over Mach 4. Speed of light is 8 trillion times faster. So, no. And they also have rail guns that can shoot like a machine gun, but they don't even have explosives. Uh, the projectile themselves coming out of the barrel have been motivated not by explosives, but by the electromagnetic force of these. It's a rail with all these magnets and go boom, 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 and shoots the thing out there. And that sucker is going like Mach 20, and it's a plutonium heavy, like all the armor on the A1 Abrams is this super duper hard but light, dense but light material. So when this projectile made out of that super whooper duper material hits something, it's like and it's also plutonium, so it's like a mini nuclear weapon that's not a nuclear weapon. It obliterates whatever it hits, and it can go through like 20 meters of hardened steel, right through and hit its target on the other side. So no, and then we have space. I mean, 20 years ago, the World Trade Center was not taken down by airplanes. Go read, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, because those guys did the real deal study, and they showed what was done, how everything went down, and what was going on. And one of the things, like when you see that film that they do over and over and over, it's like X-rayed on everyone's brain of the buildings turning into a waterfall of dust. And what happened was it was a space-based weapon, 300 miles right above, hit it with a energy beam and particle weapon of sorts. And what it did was change the atomic structure of that matter, and it went from steel to dust. It went from concrete to dust. And all of that asbestos that was in those buildings, because they were like, that thing was the most asbestos building there was. They couldn't have a fire. Every piece of steel was covered in like 4 inches of asbestos. Now, asbestos is not good for you, but if you wrap it up and cover it up so it can't flake and go into the air, well, then it's okay. But when you hit it with that space beam and you turn everything into dust, it's all mixed up with the asbestos. That's why all those guys who were working in the pit for like 6 months died terribly of cancer from asbestos in their lungs. And that's why all the people who were living in Tribeca, because when I came back to New York City 2 months after that, and the guys were still working in the pit, and they set up a place for those guys to come, have a cup of coffee and donuts in the basement of Trinity Church, which is the oldest church in America, right across the street from the World Trade Center. I took a train in Amtrak from Virginia, from Blacksburg, into or Greensboro, someplace, into New York, and then got a cab down there. And as I drove in, I saw on all the buildings that were from the 20s, they all had ledges, right? And all those ledges had about 4 feet of that dust all over Tribeca, all on Varick Street, Chambers Street, Broadway, Hudson, from about 16th Street on, everything was covered in this dust. And as the wind would blow, it would be all in the air. It was like always this cloudy, foggy, deadly mess, right? So I'm in this cab and I said, has it been this? Yeah, it's been this way since 9/11. So I go, do you know where Job Lots is? Oh, yeah, it's off Chambers. I said, yep, let's stop there first. And I said, keep the thing running. I'll give you a nice tip. I ran in and I got a bunny suit and a serious respirator, right? And a bunny suit is like if you've ever gone to a car place and they wear these suits that cover them totally, and then they spray a car, right? I got a box of those, right? And it covered you completely, toe to the tip of your head, your hands, none of you was exposed. And then it just had a little hole here, right? And I call it a bunny suit because it pulls over your head. It's just a little hole here, and I got a respirator that covered you from here to here. It just kind of pulled right over, and then you pull these cinches and it went right onto your face. And it had super duper micronite filters that like went to a zillion particles, right? So to the point where nothing's getting into my lungs. And so I put it on in and I got this other really nice thing. So I'm standing in the aisle of Job Lots, which is kind of like before Lowe's, and I basically take all my clothes up down to my underpants, and it has this really nice silk suit you put on first, which is also a bunny suit, and then you put the plastic bunny suit over that, and the silk suit really, covers every pore of your body, and it does this really interesting thing of kind of keeping you warm or keeping you cool. It keeps you in this place where you don't sweat, and then you put the plastic suit over that, and then you put the big respirator on top of that. So I walked into the church basement where my teacher was and a whole bunch of other shrinky guys I had studied with, and we were experts on PTSD. And so I walk in looking like an alien, and they go, "What the heck?" And I said, "Come outside." And I point to them at all of the cribs. I said, "I bought a big box of this. There's only 12 of you. I spent about $200 on this. So everyone needs to wear a suit and a respirator until I find out the company that can seal this place in and put HEPA filters at the windows. And those guys need to come through a thing where they take off their crappy clothes covered in asbestos, get blown off, not washed, but blown off, and all that shit sucked off of them. And then we put these silky suits on them, and then they come and have their donuts and coffee and talk to us, and we talk them out of their PTSD. And while they're doing that, there is a machine that you can put those clothes in, and it'll suck all the dust crap off. And they can put their suits on, and they can wear that silky suit, and maybe we'll give them a respirator. And anyway, so we did that, And a number of those guys, the firemen were like right on it. Yeah, thank you, Jesus. Right? They understood it because they had put out fires of chemical fires, so they understood hazardous materials. The guys who were policemen and regular you know guys who volunteered in that, no, and that's the guys who got really sick. Right? The firemen still got sick, but not like these guys, right? And then John, what's his name, of the Daily Show, had to embarrass the Congress 18 years later to get these guys some kind of help, right? And that's the essence of our government. You have to realize these guys aren't looking out for you, not at all. Like I said, we're living in martial law. We don't even know it. So, um, and you don't have to get upset. All these morons who jump up and down and go on about vaccines, blah, blah, blah. Come on, you're just being used. No, what you have to be is your best self. That's what you have to be. Forget the politics. That's irrelevant. You know, be your best self. That's all you got to do. People are all born again Christian crap. No, if you can be your best self and be born again and Christian, well, that's good. I go to 3 different churches, right? And so because one is a Ku Klux Klan Baptist church, one is I Own Everything Methodist church, and one is a pagan Roman Catholic church, right? I go to them. I don't go to their services because that would be hypocritical. I go to their fellowship, which is Bible studies. And, the guy is just reading from the book. He's got a catechism of a lesson, what John said, what Peter said, blah, 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 right? And then I just stay there and and I come in the middle and I come into the back. No one sees me. Now every time I come in, they kind of look back and see me. But I wait till towards the end when it's wrapping up and I will make a comment, right? And the last comment I made was, so here we are going on about the New Testament, right? So what's the most important and valid statement of Jesus, right? I said, well, the only one that isn't repeated, like a game of telephone, is his last words on the cross. Father, forgive them because they know not what they're doing. I said, this is it. This is like everything about what Jesus was, unconditional forgiveness. And it gives the total story that there is no mortal sin. That because we don't know what the frick we're doing, no. And there is, you'll read the Old Testament. God was not, he was, he would get upset, but he didn't like, in Sodom and Gomorrah, he didn't turn those people into salt. Those people turned themselves into salt by the actions that they were doing. All the miseries that we're experiencing right now ain't being done by God. Ain't punishing us. We are doing this ourselves. And all we need to do is open the door and let God's unconditional love into our hearts and let Jesus's unconditional forgiveness into our mind's action where we can be our best. And so what we do represents Jesus's unconditional forgiveness. Then there will be no war, no famine, no disease, none of the above. And until that day, this ain't going to end. And it's going to go through a financial this, of how bad or good it is. And I've been around long enough to see in the 70s, things were way worse than what this is now, right? And the narrative is always controlled. When when the picture's so bad, the TV guys are going to show it. I don't think so. They only show it when they are getting for their handlers, for their bosses, the response, right? And so you will see that Northern Southern, the railroad guys, they're making more money now than they ever have, right? And nothing will change. The rules won't go back. When Donald Trump left, Donald Trump took a sledgehammer to the bureaucratic motif of our government, of things like OSHA and the FAA, and the same, Biden, the Biden Obama administration of 8 years did the same thing. It decapitated whatever a positive environmental. I mean, people don't know that the EPA and the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act and all those things were started by Richard Nixon. Healthcare was started by Richard Nixon. I mean, federal healthcare was started by Richard Nixon. And why? Because we went off the gold standard and we traded with Mr. Rothschild our gold for the oil dollar and the commodity that was put in its place to hold the value instead of gold was the people themselves. So you drive around America and you will see the incorporated city of this, the incorporated village of that, the incorporated state of, and that means all of those people are owned by Mr. Rothschild via what is known as admiralty law. Go check that out. Right? And there's this guy who's if you hit what is admiralty law, and I want to hear a YouTube about it. I forget the guy's name, but he will come on, and he's like the Catherine Austin Fitts of that, right? Catherine Austin Fitts will tell you exactly the economic financial, because she's part of HUD during the savings and loans collapse. I mean, during the when all of the protection was taken away during the Bill Clinton period and the George W. period and the Ronald Reagan period. That's when all of the stuff that was put in the way to stop collapse of our economy after the Great Depression, like the Glass-Steagall Act, there were hundreds of other things that were on the books to navigate, safety rails, to have norms. And, starting with Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H., Bill Clinton, Georgie Porgy, and Dick Cheney are the boys. They all are what are called the neocons. There is no left or right of a neocon. There is no Democrat or Republican a neocon. Doesn't matter. They represent the unipolar, transnational, fascist oligarchy. Right? So that's where we are right now, and have been pretty much since Babylon. But we've had these iterations of different things just so it keeps the people out of the hair of that crew. It gives them the illusion of democracy. So that's what the French Revolution was. That's what the Holy Roman Empire was. That's what American Revolution was. That's what all of this was, right? And if you read that book, Master and Commander, is a good. It gives a good flavor of all of that in a good story. Referenced in the 1790s of just balls to the walls imperialism. So it's up to you guys, to educate yourself. Here, I'm just your griot, here to tell you, don't believe a word I say. Let's see how much juice is left in my battery. I don't want to, let's see. I have about 40%. I have about 20 more minutes. So, and what time is it? Let's see. It is 2:58. So it's supposed to start really raining around 3:30. And so I don't want to, about 20 minutes more, and then I'm going to cash out. So Jane, again, the phone number you left for me was my old phone number, and I don't have that. Some girl has it now, right? Or maybe if she answered. I thought I can't believe that Jane got my old phone number. I can't believe it. So I don't have that number anymore, Jane. So leave me on my email your phone number so I can call you. And I don't even know my new phone number. I know it ends in 2 numbers, but I don't know the rest. And we can talk. And anybody else who wants to talk to me, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. You can be part of the adepts. Those who get a hold of me on the email are my adepts. You guys who get a hold of me on the old chat here are the cadre. And again, I have to thank the 4 people who have given me something since a week before Thanksgiving, right? And I sure could use something on there. Now, I do these shows not to make money. I just need a little bit here and there, And the PayPal has been a magical thing. I mean, my car really needs some work, and I need to have it done before the car blows up, and I have no car, right? So it's I'm gonna go visit all my mechanics that are within 20 miles of each other tomorrow, and see who's got the time and who's going to give me the best deal. And so that's the story. Anyway, what else? So you get the picture. I mean, we're going to have a third world war. We're going to have a war in Europe, and we have a nuclear exchange, a slight one, not a full out, blow up kill everyone, but enough to kill a few million, especially in Europe, right? And this war was more about keeping Germany and Russia from being together, right? And so the folks who were nestling into that have been taken out of the way, both in Russia and in Germany. And so the people in Germany now, and you can see it. I mean, most people, the governmental structure has changed since since a year ago, right? It's here it is, the 27th, February 27th. The war started February 24th, so we're in the second year by 3 days, but on and around uh, um, mm, oh March of last year, 2 months into it, France and Germany and a few others, Turkey, were trying to orchestrate a ceasefire and a working out of and it could have been easy because just everyone agreed to the Minsk agreement. If the Russians, if they had stopped then, um, and basically the stand-up comedian said, "Hey, yeah, we don't have to be part of NATO. Yeah, we can." If that had just gone a little further, and but England and the United States and the unipolar transnational fascist oligarchy said, "Oh no, 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 we need this war," and so they took a number of people out in Russia and in NATO to instrument and foster Third World War. And I mean, Ukraine cannot win this. They will never, no matter how much they degrade Russia. And that's all the unipolar transnational fascist oligarchy wants, is to destroy the backbone of Russia, China, and the United States, right? And the EU. And by blowing up that pipeline, blowing up that pipeline did was really nothing to Russia, but everything to China, because Germany. Germany was the kingpin economically and technologically of the EU because of that pipeline. And when it was destroyed, they closed half their industry because they didn't have that natural gas to make plastic or to make electricity or to run anything, right? Now they squiggled with the weather so the people wouldn't get too upset because the winter was the warmest it has been for a long while, and so no one froze, and but Germany, and I would say by April, May, the dominoes of the EU's economy is going to start to fall, and it's going to be worse than '08. I mean, way worse. And you can see how the major thing is how Taiwan has already moved all of their important technology and people into America. You know, that little law that Biden passed a few months ago, the CHIPS Act. Well, he's moving all of the prime movers of technology back into America, right? And so, you know, by July, the United States will be the promo domo man, and we already make the high end and the high end middle end, right? And Taiwan and South Korea make the high end, middle end, lower middle end, and China is the only things they make is the high lower end and lower end. The only semiconductors they make are the ones that go into your um, refrigerator. Say no, 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 don't eat that ice cream, or play um, Happy Birthday on your automatic corn popper. But artificial intelligence, that's as far as China goes, right? And high technology, they don't need because they have never built the infrastructure it needs to have that, right? Where America's always had that, right? Because of just our psychology. The fact that we let so many foreigners in and let them be entrepreneurs. You look at all the guys, you know, why does China have any kind of semiconductor business? Because the guy who was one of the pre-domos of Intel when it was Texas Instrument. I mean, he was first in Texas Instrument. That was the real guys who were making the integrated circuits for, nuclear missiles in the 70s. He then went to Intel and made Intel what it is. And he got the money, but he never got the accolades or the position because he was Chinese. And so he said, fine, I'm going to China, which he did. And that guy was the main guy of making China what it is today. Like that one guy. And all we had to do, but we wanted that guy there, just like when one of the reasons why the Challenger was blown up was because we lost our access to space, right? And so China was our good buddy, and they had just brought on the Long March. So the Long March missile was, a update of the Saturn V, right? The Atlas Agena. The thing between the Saturn V and Atlas Agena was this thing the Chinese, and we had that, and they put it, and we had it to loft our nuclear weapons, so we didn't use it for satellites. So we let the Chinese launch our spy satellites, Keyhole satellite, and they made it scream, okay, we're going to fly this in C-130, put it into a hangar, and you'll put security people around it so no one looks at that technology. Like, duh. The Chinese went in there and took photographs of every square inch of that because we wanted them to have a certain level of technology that they didn't invent. It's like me going to my, computer guru kid who fixes everything for me and says, see how it's done, blah, blah, blah. And I go, what? I didn't have my glasses on. He goes, oh, don't worry, come back next time, right? So, and he's moved further away, so I've had to learn about it, right? So, as the kids say, just keep pushing buttons, you'll figure it out. Or you'll destroy your laptop. So, I mean, this stuff is all there. And the scholastics, like that guy who was going, and I didn't even play the part where he loses his mind when I start laying it out. He goes, well, you're full of shit. And that's his only response. You're full of shit. I said, well, and then I would deconstruct it and say, okay, so prove this. Tell me. Well, you're just arguing. I said, no, I'm not. I'm just asking you to have a syllogism that can explain your opinion because it's not an opinion. Scott Ritter said it. I said, well, it's not even your opinion. You're just taking somebody else's. And then he goes on and on. Well, I talked to Ken, blah blah blah. Senator, and I said, good luck. So get ready for buckle up, kids, because it's going to be one heck of a ride. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensical Bob here. you're great at telling your story. And that's all this has been for the last hour and 4 minutes and 29 seconds is a story. It's like a whopper. It's a night whopper, for the boogie boogie, But any of you have been watching since, the last 5 years, that I started talking about the big splat, you might say, well, pretty much everything he said has kind of come true. I wonder how, So anybody who would love to throw something in my PayPal, I would duly love it, right? And that's, the dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? Anybody wants to get a hold of me and talk to me about anything, just me and them, dude awake 42 at Gmail, me and them and the NSA, dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? There is no, even, so I talk to a lot of people all around the world on WhatsApp and Viber, I think it's called. And that's a point to point. So, theoretically, no one who's not on this point or this point can hear what you say because it's all mishmashed up, right? And of course, please. So I talk to a lot of people who are in the know that are all over the world. And I've known them for years. And they call me, I call them too, but they call me a lot. So, did you see this? And I go, yes. And I go, so what's your take on it? And they won't explain me their take. They will go, what's your take? And I will give them my observation of the threads. And then we talk about it and they will fill me in. So I know a couple of people who are, basically forensic anthropologists, but they work for the military and for, the guys at The Hague, right? So every time there's war crimes, they go and look at it. So this is the most documented war crimes ever, because it's been right there, right? And Russia, the way they fight their war is just one gigantic war crime, right? That's their normal way of doing it. You look at everything they've done since World War II, it's pretty much, they just go in and they have gigantic amounts of artillery, and they can lose more than anyone has, and still they got twice as much as anyone had before then. So it's so come on, how about some thumbs up? I see that 0. There's 2 of you there. How about at least 2 thumbs up? I bet you 8 people have watched. How about some thumbs up? And how about some comments? And how about subscribing and hitting that bell? And how about going and getting other people of your friends? Have a potluck dinner where we're going to watch Sensei Al-Bach. Not live per se. I have more than 2,000 shows. I've talked about everything imaginable. Just go, it's like, a roulette wheel. Just put your finger on there and go like this, and it'll go blah, 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 and it'll be on the show. Hit it. Oh, I don't like that. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's more interesting. And then just put it on the background on the big screen, and have a good old time. See what happens. Right? So. Again, how much juice do we have left here? We're down in the red zone. I gotta go. Okay, gang. Till next time. Have a good time. Throw something in the PayPal. Dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake42 at Gmail.